All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Want to welcome everybody to the New Year edition of FSMA Fridays. In fact, first one of the year, first one of the decade. So really exciting and probably a good starting point to just say thank you. We are really proud of what we've built here with FSMA Fridays, and this has been done by a lot of people through the years. And I just want to thank all of you for making this the longest standing and largest industry update. And it's been really fun to continue to grow this together. So welcome back. And we've got another really great topic and guest for you this month. And for those of you that are joining us for the very first time, we want to welcome you to the community. This, as I mentioned, is one of the longest standing industry updates that was started I think about 6 years ago. Maybe we're going into our 7th year now. I got to double check that. But the idea here is to kind of just aggregate and share some FSMA related news, the reg changes, updates, things to be aware of. And then we've started to move a little bit more into industry trends and some strategic and tactical ideas and best practices. But obviously, one of the great advantages and values that everybody loves here is the opportunity to engage with the Acheson Group experts, and we do a little Q&A. So it's a really great opportunity. We'll keep putting them on if you keep coming back. And as I mentioned, the Acheson Group has been our partner in this and continues to be. We're really proud of this partnership, and it adds a lot of value to our customer base, and I hope to all of our community, because they share some really great insight being out there in the plants each and every day. So I want to thank TAG for continuing to help us put this on. A couple things before we get started, just a couple housekeeping items. So one, Q&A, that's one of the best parts. I think one of the most valuable parts here is that there's an opportunity to ask questions. So there's a question box on the right-hand side, kind of normal deal. Pop over your questions there, and we'll monitor those and get to those as much as we can at the end. If we're a little short on time, one of the things that our guest Liliana today has offered is to address those offline directly. So don't worry if we don't quite get to them. We have a couple of different ways that we'll get those answers over to you. You'll also notice that only the panelists are displayed. So if you send over questions, it's just coming to us. It's not necessarily being broadcast all the way out. And the number one question I'll cover up front is we always do record these. For those of you that come month after month, which is great, we have like watch parties going on out there. It's really cool what a lot of you are doing. But we have a full library of these, which I'll give you a link to at the end. So yes, we do record these, so both the slides and the recording are available to view and share later on. So if you have any audio issues, we have Ann on our team in the background here. We'll do our best. Use the chat box if you're getting stuck maybe with some audio. Usually the best first step is just a swap between the phone or the web audio, depending on where you're calling in from. So with that, we're going to dig in first with a quick just FSMA update, check in what's happening in the new year here. And then our topic today we're gonna dig into a bit is on supplier risk mitigation, which is usually one of the more popular ones. And by the looks of our audience today, I think that is still true. And then, as I mentioned, we'll try and get to a little bit of Q&A here at the end. So with that, I want to introduce the most important person for today. Excited to have back Dr. Liliana Casal-Wardle. She's the Senior Director of Food Safety at the Acheson Group, has over 25 years of experience in the private industry. 17 of those, she held global leadership roles managing food safety and quality at the Hershey Company. She's got a wide variety of expertise, including food safety, food science, food defense, EMP programs, GFSI requirements, and a whole lot more. And has her PhD in organic chemistry from the University of Buenos Aires and is a certified SQF practitioner and PCQI. So welcome back, Liliana. It's really great to have you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you to everybody that has joined this FSMA Fridays. It's a pleasure to be here again, and it's a lot of fun to have you all here. So very happy. Thank you.
It is fun. One of my favorite things about you when we talk kind of behind the scenes, you're just so passionate about these topics, and so it's fun to have you as well. So let's talk first about FSMA, and we know that you and your teams are out and about and kind of hearing what's happening. So a couple of updates you wanted to share with us today.
Yeah, and I chose, we have a weekly newsletter with TAG where we share different updates from FSMA, from the CDC, from USDA. Although FSMA is our bigger focus, it doesn't mean it's the only one. But I chose this one specifically because it's probably creating a new focus on an area that had received less attention, and it's the retail and at food service areas. And FDA has been very focused with FSMA on the manufacturers and the processors and growers and importers. And now they're looking at the e-commerce business. They're looking at the homemade and distributed products. So it's a new focus, and it's going to be part of what it is, the new food code for 2021. For now, they're focusing on that business, and they're also enhancing practices on the food safety manufacturing processes to improve compliance on FSBP. So stay alert. There's a lot coming from FDA, even though FSMA is very well implemented. There's always news, there's always change, and there's always evolution. And given that the deputy commissioner is Frank Yanis, and he has a strong background on food safety culture, that's another pillar that is coming too, and it's going to become more and more part of the FDA inspections and facility assessments.
Okay, that's good to hear. And I think for the types of folks that join these calls, I think that's good news. I think those are the things we're all trying to improve. And if you follow him, like on LinkedIn, boy, that new era that you call out here, that is absolutely what they're marketing, I guess you could say this as, right? So it's coming. It's coming for sure. Okay. Well, good. Well, thank you for that. We'll keep our eyes open. I'll share a couple of resources for folks to grab more information on that before we wrap up. So for our topic today, Liliana, I know supplier risk is something you know a lot about and are very passionate about. And I think through the years, as I've interviewed all of you over at TAG, this really is kind of the tip of the spear, right, in terms of risk mitigation and throughout the facilities for obvious reasons. It's challenging. It's only getting harder. So we had a few things we were going to just talk through today that I'd like to get your perspective on, and then again want to welcome the audience to ask any questions, and we'll try and get to those before the end here. And so one of the things that we wanted to ask about are some recommended paths to manage that supplier risk, and in whether they're for your existing suppliers or new suppliers. We know a lot of the folks listening can have hundreds and hundreds of suppliers, right? And global with all kinds of different challenges. So what are some of the ways to look at these as separately or together in terms of how you manage new versus existing?
So one thing that we have to think of is the supplier model has evolved and changed, and FSMA was a big driver of that change. I'm going to say 15 years ago, there were a lot of companies that have very transactional relationships with their suppliers, managed through purchase orders, bought on targeted to price, and there was not a great management established for suppliers. GFSI created stronger models, and FSMA was a driver for that, because FDA with FSMA gave it a lot of burden on the management of risk to have a controlled supplier change, which requires approved suppliers and the models to develop those approvals. So the industry needed to start brainstorming, okay, what are the risks that I have? And the risks are product related, packaging related, and specifically supplier manufacturing site related, okay? So you have, in order to have a good grip on understanding your suppliers, you got to understand those risks. You got to have a way to understand the inherent risk of your product, and don't forget to look at your packaging product and look at those risks. If the packaging is primary packaging and has contact with the product, you got to look at that, and you got to look at specifications, and you got to look at chemicals. So the chemical and biological risk of that inherent product that you're going to buy, where is it grown, the geographical risk, the historical risk, the risk for adulteration of product, all those have to be on the scope. And then you have to build your matrix for your suppliers, which have to do with the manufacturing risk, with the storage risk, with the production risk, with the kill step that you have. For new suppliers, it's a discovery phase. You're looking at all that. You're looking at a history of recalls. Right. You're looking at a history. You're looking at how solidly they are on their business model, because if they have a solid business model, there's a better guarantee that they're going to be able to manage their program to a better control. And you incorporate all those in how you look at your risks, okay? With the existing suppliers, once you understand what are the risks that your product and your supplier has, you manage them through a model or a tool, and there are many tools in the market that you can use to see where they are, how are they building the relationship with you, okay? Are you communicating with them? Are you understanding their needs? Do you have a solid contract that makes sense for both sides? I mean, right. To manage existing suppliers in a good way, you've got to build a relationship. You're dealing with people. You have to establish contacts. You have to communicate with them. You have to look for shared benefits. And you have to strengthen those benefits. So you got to have frequent discussions. You got to look at, can they deliver the product on time? Are they delivering it adequately as meeting your specifications? Do they have specifications of their own for the product, or you have to build that part? That's another very important part, because it shows you how much do they understand the requirements for suppliers with FSMA. So if they don't have a model of their own, you can look at their maturity level and kind of classify them as, are they independent? Are they self-managed? And do they bring a learning curve to your facility, or you have to build them from scratch? Right. And then you have to decide which model applies to you for the new ones and for the existing ones. Because in both cases, the landscape can change because of geographical issues, because of financial issues. So the excellent supplier 3 years ago might have had a recall, for example, or there was a drought in the area, and then he had a problem with the crops to source them. And then they become more exposed. And the part that suffers first is maybe the less visible, which is the internal part on the management of food safety, okay? So you have to be watchful, and that's how good communication, good partnership, a good business model where you understand their needs, where you work with them on the sourcing, do a risk assessment together, work with them to see what resources they have in their manufacturing sites to address the food safety issues, if they have an adequate kill step, if they validated their kill step, and work with them, show them what you care for, and work with them on what they care for, okay? And develop a scorecard that shows all those parameters that are going to be something that you're going to want to follow to see how they are performing throughout the years. The other thing is never have one supplier. I mean, build great relationships, always have a backup, because things can happen. There can be shortage of their own commodities in some areas where they source. So always have a backup. And that does not mean a bad partnership with a supplier, okay? It means a good partnership because you're guaranteeing for your business continuity, and you're not discontinuing them because you're using more than one vendor, okay? Yeah. But the supplier model has to tend to a partnership, definitely has to be collaborative. Transactional relationships are really disencourages, starting with FSMA and continuing with your procurement team that doesn't want to build those relationships because it does not guarantee continuity.
Okay.
Does this answer your question?
It does. And I think I like the idea of the model, because we see a lot of folks working hard to improve their supplier management process. So the new ones coming in, they have a model, right? But it's the
Mm-hmm.
old customers that are the real pain. Or so I like the scorecarding, the modeling, and that kind of leads to our next thing because
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned some of the advantages, but once you have a model or a tool, some scorecarding, and there's a lot of different ways to do this. These are some digital examples that we've worked on together. But can you talk about how this can help someone, big or small, if they have a tool to do this?
Yeah. And more you're seeing the need of a tool. I mean, we're sharing on the screen one that we have developed together. I mean, this is a tag supply chain tool. There are many tools, but this model and is a tag safety chain tool. Okay, but this model, what it has is it's capturing all the historical, the geographical, the inherent risk of the product, plus the supply chain risk. And the great thing is it's not a written in stone. And that's something that we recommend. You can use any tool, but make sure that it's not a one size fits all, because one size fits all does not apply. Every business has its unique characteristics. The more in depth this tool is built to track which are the risks that we have to focus on, the better you're going to allocate resources to work on those. And that's the expression on any risk mitigation program. You're going to focus on those that we're showing here on the slides in red, because those are going to be the ones that are going to be your modes of failure.
Right.
So you put the resources to work on, okay, I discovered that I have a geographical issue. And I'm going to say something. For example, now, sourcing from China has become difficult because we're going through a pandemic, and so the borders are starting to be closed. So you're going to have a backup plan for that, okay?
Yeah.
And you go to your matrix and you look at your supply chain providers, and you look at the risks that they pose, because you have to make changes quickly. So having a tool gives you a fast reaction to changes, and gives you a better understanding of the strengths and weaknesses of your suppliers, and how you can share tools with them to build their strengths, which is what you want, okay? Yeah. You have to be open. You have to be transparent with your suppliers. And when you're building those tools, ask the difficult questions from them, and make sure you get answers, because if they don't have the answers for the difficult questions, help them build them. There's nothing more powerful than working as a team and analyzing things with different sets of eyes to build a stronger tool. And the other thing is, the great advantage, if you have a supplier that has incorporated the components of a food safety culture and has incorporated behavioral tracking and scorecards for how things have continuity of doing things right, that is an added value. In the maturity model, that supplier is going to be high and the risk is going to be lower. Okay?
Yep. No, that's great. And I like what you said about sharing it and working together as a team. I had a customer tell me recently they developed a scorecarding system, and they're using some of these things. But again, regardless of how you're doing it, what was interesting to me is he said their suppliers have become competitive about it. They ask for their scores because they're trying to improve them. And that's when you really start to shift the conversation a little bit. And I was speaking at a conference a few months ago, and someone had referred to a supplier scorecard as a unicorn, right? Something you've never seen, and they do exist, and you can build them, and they can be a lot of value.
Yeah.
Let's talk about value from a different side when we talk about supplier risk mitigation and GFSI certification. You want to talk a little bit about how that can help from your perspective?
So GFSI is an amazing tool. There's different models of certification within GFSI, but in all those models, you have a very in-depth analysis of the readiness to meet food safety, and a global alignment of what are those requirements. So it doesn't matter. It kind of counterfeits a little bit the different regulatory requirements that they could be, because GFSI englobes everything on food safety risk, okay? And that helps you in this globalized sourcing world to have a good scope and a good idea of the risks that you're going to have, even sourcing from different countries, okay? This does not mean that I would recommend just source based on GFSI audits and don't do some kind of an assessment of other audits, regulatory visits, and non-compliance that have been identified by other second-party audits. I mean, that's what I said, be transparent with your suppliers. GFSI is a very powerful tool and keeps on evolving to get even more powerful. And you have to use it in conjunction with other tools and understanding where the risks are and how they are managing that tool. Be transparent, share your expectations, look at the audit, not just the score, okay? Review the non-conformances that were found in the audit, because that's going to give you an idea of what's going on in the facility, okay? So just the certificate, yes, I mean, a great score in a GFSI audit means the facility must be good. But don't get blindsided with surprises afterwards. I mean, ask for the non-conformities, how they were resolved, which were these, were there any criticals, were there any majors? And that is part of we have incorporated also in the supply chain tool, okay? And review results of other external audits, regulatory auditors that go to the facility. They have a different set of eyes to look at the facility because they're looking at it from the regulatory standpoint. So make sure you encompass all that to have good visibility of how to work and have a teamwork approach of working and managing those risks together. Because if you're interested in sourcing from that supplier, don't stay on the other side of the road and just watch them do it, okay? Build that relationship, providing input. At the end of the day, if you provide input and they meet your expectations, they're your suppliers. So the more you can entangle together expectations, the better you're going to function as a team to bring the ingredients to your facility and be compliant with what FDA expects, which is understand your suppliers and understand the risks that they pose. Because, I mean, you can't say, oh, it's my supplier, it's all his fault, I don't know anything. That's unacceptable, okay? So let's make sure we keep that in mind.
That's good. So I like, because what you're saying really is we're able to raise expectations, but they're also very clear, right? Because you're working off a common set of clear standards.
Yeah.
No, that's good. And so the kind of as we wrap up here, and I appreciate how you've talked a lot about relationships, partnerships, working together with suppliers, and how that relationship has changed. You see it from a lot of different angles. You're in a lot of different facilities and environments and different verticals within food and beverage. Just curious if you have any tips or feedback around, how to really improve those partnerships between the two.
Well, I mean, in order to improve those partnerships, I mean, target to really build partnerships, okay? Where I mean, you communicate regularly and effectively with your suppliers. As I said, I mean, you have a good contract, you establish roles and responsibilities, you established service requirements as well as food safety requirements that they have to be compliant with, and you understand their capabilities. So when you work with them, okay, you're not assuming they're 100% perfect. You understand their capabilities, you understand their strengths and opportunities, and you work together and build on those. And communication is key. You have to review the deliverables, the performance that they're having in your scorecard, and you have to listen to them when they have problems, and if possible, help them work out solutions. Okay, it's in your own best interest, and that is partnership. And of course, choose wisely, understand their business model. I mean, if the business is not solid and strong, it's going to be harder for them to be compliant with your strong and sometimes difficult food safety requirements that are key drivers for success. So, and as always, a model of rewards and continuity of business is always a very positive driving model. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have contingencies and your contract is going to have all those contingencies for non-compliance, but work with them and make sure that in the model of partnership, you develop a maturity model with them of where they are now and where do you want them to be to be that preferred supplier that you want them to be for your facility, okay?
Right.
And that is always very motivating, because what companies are looking is for longer term relationships also.
Right. That's the end goal, right? So that's great. Well, thank you. So I think we've got 4 good sections there that we covered. We've got a few questions coming in, Liliana, and I'll see what we can sneak in here before we let everybody get out to their day here.
Okay.
So we have a question from Kayla. A good question here. It says, any advice for managing risks where the relationship is indirect, i.e. purchasing through distributors? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, that is a complex model. So if the relationship is managed through distributors, work very closely with your distributors to set up your expectations, review the contract that they have with that supplier of theirs, okay, and how they're managing that contract, and look if they have built a partnership, and if not, provide them input to build that partnership, to understand where the risks are, and even propose to them, okay, I'd like to visit them with you. I mean, you're sourcing from them, I'd like to know them. I mean, nothing wrong with that. An open, transparent relationship where you can build that model. I mean, I've had that happen to me, and it was a very interesting interaction, very positive interaction, even though they were not our direct supplier. Right. Because an open and transparent relationship with a positive approach is always guarantees success. Okay.
Right. No, that's good. And you started to touch on this here. So there's another question from Janice. She's asking, what are your thoughts on visiting suppliers to audit them?
Oh, I like that. I like to visit suppliers, and yes, do an audit, but also visit them to see. Sometimes when you do an audit, they get audit ready, so the facility is it's kind of a theater show, okay?
Right.
Yeah, and you know that. So basically, visit them on a friendly visit. I mean, your eyes are still going to tell you, even if you're not recording on a chart, everything, your eyes are still going to tell you how things are going, okay? And build that relationship that, I mean, I used to have suppliers in Latin America, and when I went over there, I would plan to, for example, visit the cocoa suppliers, huge ingredient for Hershey. I wanted to see what they were doing, and tour the plant and talk to them and see what trouble they were having with sourcing the beans, or and those things. You build relationships, you understand the different process, you understand how they manage risk, and they like to build a relationship with you. So then once that relationship is built and you get to know them personally, we're all people, you strengthen your communication with them, and they're going to come to you when they have a question, when they need to understand something, or when you have a question, you can go to them.
Yeah, goes both ways. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
We have another couple questions on foreign supplier verification, and that could probably be its own topic.
Yeah.
So, we'll probably take this one offline to answer it in particular, but just in general, do you have any thoughts or things around the foreign suppliers, how to be thinking about them in these contexts, or is it pretty much the same thing?
Well, I mean, with foreign suppliers, I'm going to say you have to strengthen your knowledge of your suppliers, because it's an area of focus for FDA, and it's an area of concern. It's like the dark hole that they want to know more. So make sure you know more before they know more. And be prepared. I mean, have a good food safety plan that with a good hazard analysis. I mean, don't take it for granted that they're going to have it. Just work on it with them, review it with them. If possible, visit the facility yourself, because at the end of the day, that is what FDA is going to do. Okay. And I can say that firsthand. So don't just take it lightly. That is a huge topic, and we can have a whole conference on that.
I agree. Mm-hmm. I agree. And there's some good questions, and I know we didn't get to all of them, but I appreciate everybody who's sending them in. A couple of things we'll make sure and get them answers back to you individually. But we also, if you look up on the screen here, we've got on LinkedIn, we have a FSMA Fridays LinkedIn group, and we'll also post the answers there. Those are great places for us to continue the conversation and engage So before you hop off today, punch on over to LinkedIn, look up FSMA Fridays, and request access to the group, and we'll get you in there. Also highly recommend the Acheson Group website. Liliana mentioned earlier, they have a newsletter, a tremendous resource, and they also have tons of content on there that you can access for a lot of what we're talking about today, and obviously a whole lot more. And then at Safety Chain, we also have the entire library mentioned in the opening. So if you go to our resources section, look for FSMA Fridays, and you can access every video from the entire library of 5-6 years of webinars there, and you can search by topic on YouTube as well, where we post those. So we'd love an opportunity to share more. And we obviously also have a supply chain tool that we've built in conjunction with TAG around their expertise using our technology. It's been really great to see some early feedback and benefits for our mutual customers. So if there's a digital way you'd like to approach this with some technology, we'd love to learn more about how we can help you and show you what we're up to there. And next session will be end of February. So February 28th, we'll see you for the next FSMA Fridays. And until then, appreciate everybody joining us. Thank you so much. And Liliana, thank you very much for being here today. We appreciate the partnership and all the great info.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here. Thanks, Brian, and thanks to everybody that joined.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great weekend.